Well friends, this is the third lecture on world population growth. In the first lecture, I talked about population growth in ancient society and showed how for lakhs of years world population remained stable, because in the ancient society fertility was around 7 children per woman. In entire lifetime a woman produces around 7 children, which was much below the biological maximum level of fertility, but this 7 much below maximum level was maintained due to cultural and social constraints. Mortality in normal years was perhaps as high or as low as today, but periodically due to epidemics, wars, violence, shortage of rainfall or excessive rainfall, attack by wild animals, fire, natural devastation, mortality jumped to very high levels. So, periodically there were fluctuations, and in extreme cases mortality went up to maybe 250 or 300 per thousand population per year. I gave you the example of European cities in which when plague, bubonic plague broke out, then in a few days time nearly 20 to 25% of the whole population and sometime more was wiped out, giving a mortality rate of about 250 per thousand. So, this was the level, and as a result of that population of the world remained stationary, and you have seen that it took at least 5 lakh years for world population to reach the first billion mark. In the second lecture, then I said that in 19th and 20th century world population started growing. World population grew first in the developed countries, where improvement in mortality started in the middle of 18th century sometime, and it continued. It took more than 200 years, or one can even say 300 years to reach the present day low levels of mortality in European countries. Population in developing countries, I have also given you the classification of countries into developed and developing. Population of developing countries remained stable, and it was after Second World War. In the second part of 20th century, that when these countries of Asia, Africa, Latin America became politically independent and their national governments started implementing programs for improvement of health, particularly with regard to reduction of mortality and morbidity due to infectious diseases. Special mention must be made of malaria, kala jar, diarrhea, dysentery, tuberculosis. Then birth rate started falling. This fall in birth rate in less developed countries was sudden, and as a result of that, in the second part of 20th century world population started growing at a fast rate. Now, just to repeat, for maintaining continuity between the last lecture and this lecture, let me repeat that it was in 1820 that the world population reached first billion. The second billion was reached in 1930, only at a gap of 110 years. The third billion was reached in 1960 at a gap of 30 years, fourth billion in 1974 at a gap of 14 years, then fifth billion in 87 and sixth billion in 1999 at gaps of 13 and 12 years respectively. So, this is the rate at which world population is growing today. Now, in this lecture I am focusing on the differences between the developed and developing countries, the present day developed countries and the present day developing countries. According to UNFPA's state of world population 2009, the world population has reached 6.83 million, and it is growing at the rate of 1.2% per year. UNFPA, United Nations Fund for Population Activities, publishes state of world population every year. According to the latest report available to me, World Population Report of 2009, the world population has reached 6.83 billions. I am sorry, it should be billions, and it is growing at the rate of 1.2% per year. There is a great demographic divide between developed and developing countries, and we are talking about this divide today. The more developed countries have 1233.3 millions, means 1.2 billion, and they exhibit a growth rate of only 0.3% per year. So, out of 6.8 billion people in the world, 1.2 billion are living in so called developed countries, and the rate of growth of developed countries is only 0.3% per year for all the developed countries combined. There are some developed countries which are experiencing negative rate of growth, and there are some other developed countries which have a slightly better rate of growth. On the other hand, the less developed countries have 5596.1 million people, means 5.59 billion people, and they exhibit a growth rate of 1.4% per year. Here also in Asia, Africa and Latin America, there are some countries which have growth rate much below this 1.4. China, for example, second largest country of the world in population, has rate of growth much below this, but there are other countries which have rate of growth is still above 2.5% per year. Overall, all less developed countries combined have population of size 5.59 billion, and the growth rate of developing countries is 1.4% per year. Now, I also mentioned that in the category of developing countries, a certain number of countries, mostly of Africa, some of Asia, they are also categorized as the least developed countries. 835.5 million people in the less developed countries are living in these countries which are designated as the least developed countries. And these least developed countries show a growth rate of 2.3% per year. Now, you can also see that there is a relationship between development and growth rate. Most developed countries have growth rate 1.2, less developed countries in general have growth rate of 1.4, and the least developed of all the developing countries have a growth rate of 2.3. So, there is a negative relationship between development and growth rate of population. I will show you a table 5.3, which shows the relationship or data on size of population, rate of growth and doubling time for developed and developing countries. So, world as a whole, size 6829 million, growth rate 1.2, doubling time 58.3, and projected population in 2050 is 9,150 millions, or in billions 9.1 billion. More developed countries have a population of 1,233 million, their growth rate is 0.3, doubling time is 233 years now, and the projected population in 2050 is 1,275.2 million, which is not much higher than the present size of population. Less developed countries have present population 5596 million, the rate of growth is 1.4, doubling time is only 50, means in 50 years time they will double, and therefore, in 2050 means around 42 years from now, their population would be 7875.0. I am saying 42 because this 5596 is not the population of 2010, This is the latest population given in 2009 report of UNFPA. The least developed countries have population 835.5 and the rate of growth is 2.3, doubling time is 30.4. In 30 years time their population is doubling, this is the rate of growth, and therefore, in 2050 the total population of the least developed countries will reach 1672.4 millions. That means, in 2050 the total population of these least developed countries will become larger than the present population of most developed countries. The divide in population dynamics of developed and developing countries has implications for economic, political and social divides. There are also such divides within the less developed countries caused by their colonial past and unequal and capitalist development. So, not all less developed countries are at the same level of development. In less developed countries, for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Kenya, Ghana, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they are not all at the same level of development. There are differences in levels of development, and these differences in levels of development are further reflected in differences in the growth rate of population. Within countries also you find similar differences. In a country like India, we have been talking about this, that there are tremendous regional differences, because westernization started more in urban areas, that too in large cities and that too in coastal regions. So, no wonder that there are very significant state wise, urban, rural and regional differences in growth rates of population. Kerala, I often call Kerala as the Europe of India and Bihar as the Africa of India. So, there are very significant differences. If you look at some extreme cases in developed countries, you have Japan, Hong Kong, France, Italy, Switzerland, which are perhaps at the best of demographic indicators, and there are countries in less developing countries, Mali, Mozambique, Nigeria, Lesotho, Swaziland, Afghanistan, which are at the worst level of demographic indicators. Take just IMR. In Japan, infant mortality rate is 3. That means, in Japan, if 1000 children are born, only 3 children die during infancy, means between 0 and 1 years, and all others 997 survive. While in a country like Afghanistan, when 1000 children are born, 154 of them die in the very first year of life in age group 0 to 1, and only 846 survive to age 1. Differences in maternal mortality rate are tremendous. In Japan, when 100,000 children are born, means 1 lakh children are born, only 6 women die due to factors associated with childbirth. In Afghanistan, when equal number of children are born, then 1,800 women die due to reasons associated with childbirth. Differences in maternal mortality ratio are actually much more pronounced than differences in infant mortality. There are also differences in life expectancy. The best life expectancy is for Japan 86.5 for females. That means, a newborn girl child in Japan today can expect to survive for 86 years, while a newborn girl child in Afghanistan is expected to survive for only 44 years. This is the gap, this from 44 to 86, this is the gap in life expectancy of females. You also notice that there are gaps in life expectancy of males and females. So, while in Japan life expectancy for females is 86.5, for males it is 79.4, nearly 7 years less than for females. In Afghanistan, where life expectancy is low, there is no gap between males and females. Now, this table also shows that differences in maternal mortality are much more pronounced than differences in infant mortality rate. And this suggests that it is easier to improve infant mortality by providing basic medical facilities at the time of childbirth, and by providing clean drinking water, by providing vaccinations. Perhaps you can reduce infant mortality rate to very low levels, but reduction in maternal mortality rate requires more serious and more concentrated efforts, and efforts in diverse areas. Just public health measures are not enough. You need to reduce anemia among women, you need to provide transport and communication facilities, you have to provide for empowerment of women, and many cultural and social factors which affect women's health or health utilization by women. Those factors will also have to be taken care of, then only maternal mortality can decline. If you look at fertility, you find that the differences in fertility are equally pronounced. So, in the countries, in the developed countries, extremes are Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, Singapore, Poland, Germany. In Hong Kong, total fertility rate is only 1.01. That means, a couple, means two persons of this generation are being replaced by only one child in the next generation. So, common sense says that in the next generation, population of Hong Kong would be just half of the existing population. Similar is the case in Korea, Japan, Singapore, Poland, Germany. Germany, in these countries, Germany has slightly better total fertility, but that is also much below 1.5. 2.1 is called the replacement level fertility, and all these countries, increasingly most of the developed countries are having fertility below the replacement level. And on the other hand, in less developed countries, you have Chad, Uganda, Somalia, Togo, Afghanistan and Niger, where fertility is 6 or above. In the extreme case, in Niger, fertility is 7.07. While talking about fertility in ancient society, I was saying that normally fertility of ancient society was at 7. That means, in Niger, fertility level corresponds to the level which prevailed in the world 5 lakh years ago. So, in Niger, fertility level has not changed at all. So, these are the differences in fertility levels. The table shows that the total fertility varies from 1.01 in Hong Kong to 7.07 in Niger. In most developed countries, fertility is below 2.1, and however, the developing countries are also moving towards lower fertility. Several developing countries have already moved towards lower fertility: Sri Lanka, China, Indonesia, and you can name many other countries where fertility is declining at a fast rate. Even in our own country now, we do not have a fertility level of 6, which was the case in 50s. We are very close to replacement level, and some states of our country have already reached the replacement level or have gone below the replacement level, like Goa or Kerala or Himachal Pradesh. Now, another factor in world population growth with respect to which we would like to compare developed and developing countries is international migration. International migration is a factor which is hard to ignore, and perhaps in the future international migration will affect the world population, its society and culture, civilization more than fertility or mortality. The net migration rate in the more developed countries is 3 per 1000 population. That means, in net terms, means in immigrants minus emigrants, they have on every 1000 persons in developed countries as a whole, they have 3 immigrants, net immigrants, and according to population division of United Nations, estimates made in 2005 in some countries like USA, Russian Federation and Germany, which come in the category of top 20 countries having largest number of international migrants, the migrants constitute more than 5% of the total population of the country. This is more than 5% of the total population of the country, but within the country there are several regions where percentage of immigrants can reach as high a level as 50%. In United States, in Canada, there are several regions which are now full of migrants from Asian or Latin American countries. When you come to developing countries, the net migration rate in the developing countries is -1 per thousand, means developing countries are receiving migrants, they are also sending migrants. In terms of net migration is negative, that means they are more of sending migrant type, and on every 1000 persons they are sending 1. The two rates plus 3 per thousand for developed countries and -3 for less developed countries suggests that the same amount of migration affects the developed countries more than it lessens the demographic burden in the developing countries, because developing countries have large population base. So, in net terms their migration is only -1, while the developed countries which have a smaller population, about say 30% of the world population, there the net migration rate is +3. Moreover, there are many developing countries with a large immigration rate above 5 per thousand, and there are many countries like Gulf countries. There are many Gulf countries where proportion of migrants is quite substantial, and in countries like Western Sahara, Burundi, Seychelles, Botswana, Bahrain, Cyprus and United Arab Emirates, you have a very large proportion of migrants. In terms of numbers, if you want to compare developed and developing countries, in the world as a whole in 1990, number of international migrants was 154. In 2005, it increased to 190. So, there is an increase of 35.8 million, and the percentage distribution of this migration in various regions of the world is like this, that 82.4% in 1990, 82.4% of the total international migrants were found in developed regions, 72.5% were found in less developed regions, and 11.0% in the least developed regions. You can also see what is the percentage in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Northern America, Europe, Oceania. When you compare these percentages with these percentages in 1990 and the same in 2005, you find that number of migrants has increased in more developed countries, has not changed much in less developed countries, and the number of international migrants in least developed countries has actually declined. In terms of percentage share, percentage of migrants in the more developed regions has increased from 53.2 to 60.5. In least developed countries, it has declined from 46.8% to 39.5, and in least developed countries, it has declined from 7.1% to 5.5%. There are broad differences between developed and developing countries. I thought that for the purpose of this class, I can broadly talk about differences in various components and processes of population between developed and developing countries. Density of population. In developed countries, density of population varies greatly. There are some developed countries where density of population is very high, mostly European countries. There are other developed countries where density of population is less, Canada, even in United States, density of population is less. In developing countries also density of population varies greatly. In Africa it is slightly less, in South Asia it is more, and within countries again there are significant variations. Growth rate in developed countries, growth rate of population is either 0 or negative. In developing countries it varies from a low growth rate of 1% to a high growth rate of 2.5%. Fertility in the developed countries has gone below the replacement level universally, and in developing countries it is declining. In a typically developing countries, fertility level means total fertility rate is between 3 and 4 children. Mortality in developed countries, life expectancy is very high, above 80 years for females, and there is a gap of 4 to 7 years between males and females. Females live longer. Females are believed to be biologically a stronger sex than males. Women live 4 to 7 years longer than males in the developed countries. In developing countries, there is low to moderate level of life expectancy with less differences between males and females. For females, life expectancy normally varies from 58 to 68. There are some outliers, but by and large life expectancy varies from 58 to 68. Migration, with respect to migration, there is emigration often leading to internal reaction against liberal, I am sorry, it should be immigration. In the developed countries there is immigration, means some people are leaving developed countries for other developed countries or for less developed countries, but more are coming inside from less developed countries in search of employment, as political refugees, and often as a result of climatic change or internal conflicts, violence, or because of westernization, modernization. In developing countries it varies. While most countries are sending migrants to other countries, several countries like Gulf countries I mentioned are having significant in-migration or immigration of professionals and workers. Afghanistan today has a large number of immigrants who are involved as professionals and workers in reconstruction of Afghanistan. Average age of population is going up in developed countries because they have low fertility and high mortality, means low fertility and high life expectancy, not mortality. They have low fertility and high life expectancy. So, the average age of population is going up. Not only proportion of aged is high, among the aged 60 plus, proportion of more aged 80 plus is also increasing. In developing countries, the process of aging is on. Several countries have the advantage of opening of demographic window. Countries like India, countries like Pakistan, the countries like India, Pakistan, they have the advantage of opening of demographic window. In terms of human development index, all the developed countries show a high human development index. Less developed countries show low to medium, and that is because income, the major component of human development index, is very high for the developed countries, and in developing countries it goes from low to moderate levels, with some countries having high income also. But if these countries have high income, then they are poor in terms of other things like adult literacy or school enrollment rate or life expectancy. These are two other indicators of human development. So, there are some developing countries which are high on income, but they are poor on adult literacy and school enrollment rate and life expectancy. So, they have low to moderate levels of income and low to medium level of human development index. Share of developed countries in the total population of the world is decreasing because their fertility is low, and share of developing countries is increasing. The future predictions are that all the developed countries will have a negative natural rate of growth. Overall growth rate of population may be positive for some, but that will be because the negative natural growth rate, birth rate minus death rate, is neutralized or more than neutralized by immigrants from the less developed countries. In less developed countries, you will have low to moderate growth rate, yet positive growth rate, and population will stabilize at much higher levels, maybe in 2050, 2060, at different dates in different countries, population will stabilize at much higher levels. Then the regarding population policy, because of this reason, low fertility, aging, high life expectancy, high human development index, and high requirements of economy, most of the developed countries are going for pro-natal population policy. Pro-natal means in favor of increasing fertility, while less developed countries, because they are passing through a phase of demographic transition or population explosion, they are going for anti-natal policies or policies which discourage reproduction. In some extreme cases like China, they have even gone for one child policy, but in some or other form most of the less developed countries have anti-natal or fertility discouraging policies. Are policies effective? In case of developed countries, it appears that the policies are not effective, and despite incentives to produce more, the total fertility rate of the developed countries is constantly decreasing. There are some indications in some small number of cases where fertility shows some sign of improvement or stagnation and has stopped declining. This is called third demographic transition, but this third demographic transition is only an anticipation. We are yet to see how many developed countries will see third demographic transition in which fertility starts improving at least to some decimal points. In less developed countries, it is difficult to assess how effective the policies are, because at a time when population policy or family planning program is discouraging fertility, there are other factors: modernization, westernization, rationalization, secularization, improvement in education, improvement in transport and communication, media messages, because of which even in absence of family planning programs, their fertility rates would decline and eventually come to some lower levels. Is there any advantage also of rapid population growth for us? We are all the time talking about negative effects of growth rate of population in developing countries. Are there advantages also? Yes, there are some advantages also. Population growth in less developed countries has some positive consequences. Among the positive consequences, several of the developing countries are having the advantage of opening of demographic window. This concept implies the bulging of population in working ages, particularly in the age group 15 to 29 years. Means proportion of population, this 15 to 29 is prime working ages. Proportion of people in prime working ages is increasing, and proportion of people below 15 means children, above 60 old, and 30 to 60 older working population is decreasing. In India also we have 25 years window of opportunity because of the following three reasons. 11th 5-year document of India shows that in India we have the advantage of opening of demographic window. There are three reasons: constant decrease in fertility level leading to reduction in proportion of population at younger ages, because our fertility is constantly declining. So, the proportion of children in age group 0 to 15 is declining. Second, lack of significant improvement in life expectancy at older ages. At older ages means 60, 65, there is some improvement in life expectancy, but not much. Overall life expectancy of India has increased because of reduction in infant mortality rate. So, there is not significant improvement in conditional life expectancies at higher ages. And third, baby boomers generation. Baby boomers generation means when fertility was high. In 70s, 80s fertility was high, and the children who were born say in late 80s, they are now crossing the age of 20. So, in 15 to 29 you have proportionately more number of people, an expansion of the base of the age pyramid, and gradually as demographic transition proceeds further, it becomes a sort of triangular shaped age distribution. So, the children born more than 20 years ago in India, when fertility was high, are now entering the age group 20 and above, and as a result of that we have more number of working age people at younger ages, and if they can be provided enough resources, skills, training, employment, then India can reap the advantage of that. We are the youngest population of the world. Median age of population in India means the age below which nearly 50% population is found, and above which again 50% population is found. Median age of India is 24. Compare this with the median age of Europe. Median age of Europe is 38 years. Japan highest, Japan median age is 41. 50% population of Japan is above 41 years. So, even China comes under less developed countries or developing countries. Even in China, average want more number of children, and because mortality and especially infant and child mortality is high. So, they want more number of children than they actually want to have in their lifetime, due to that fear that some of them might die. Then there is unmet need for family planning. There are many couples in less developed countries, including India, who have already produced that much number of children with which they are satisfied, and they do not want any child more, but due to lack of effective and acceptable contraceptive method. If you look at statistics of family planning in countries like India, the share of sterilization is too much. Most users of family planning, or most users of modern methods of family planning in India, have gone for sterilization. Perhaps that was the only method that was popularized or forced on people by the health infrastructure or government of India. Knowledge of spacing methods like condoms is very little. And the third factor is age distribution of population itself. At least as far as the birth rate is concerned, age distribution of population also affects the birth rate or the fertility rate of the country. So, in this certainly you are right that one reason why less developed countries have high fertility is that they have high mortality, and especially infant and child mortality. And there is always a fear. I remember in one of our field works done about 30 years back in a neighboring district of UP, in Etawah district of UP, in rural areas. I conducted a study, and people used to say that father or parents of one son are like one-eyed persons. When I asked them how many sons and daughters they would like to have, they said 2 sons and 1 daughter. 2 sons, why not 1 son? Because father of 1 son is like one-eyed person. They wanted to say that as one-eyed person, in Hindi Kana, is always under tremendous anxiety about safety of his only eye. So, if you have only 1 son and suppose he dies, your infant mortality at that time infant mortality rate was above 100, then what do they do? So, since the usefulness of son is very high in agrarian societies like ours, and infant mortality is also high, even today it has not gone below 50. So, that is one reason why people want to have more children than they actually desire to have in their lifetime. You are right.
So, when you talk about the future predictions, you say that negative natural growth rate is in developed countries. So, what is this negative natural growth?
You see, as I defined one day, natural growth rate refers to difference between birth rate and death rate. A large number of developed countries, because their birth rate has gone below the death rate, are facing a situation of negative natural rate of growth. There is a difference between growth rate and natural rate of growth. Natural growth rate is birth rate minus death rate, and overall growth rate also depends on migration. So, there are some countries where birth rate is lower than death rate, but because of migration, because of more immigration from other countries, they are able to maintain a non-zero or somewhat positive rate of growth. So, whether the developed countries in the future will have a somewhat positive rate of growth or a negative rate of growth, while almost all of them will have a negative natural rate of growth, will depend on the net rate of international migration. If they are able to attract migrants from less developed countries, they are going to have a non-zero, somewhat positive rate of growth, and if they are failing to attract international migrants from less developed countries, then their overall growth rate can be negative, because the natural growth rate is negative.
And lastly, sir, why are policies inefficient in developed countries? What are the reasons behind their inefficiency?
Yes, both developed countries and developing countries are finding it difficult to implement their policies. Policies are different. In developed countries, they have pronatal policies. In less developed countries, we have antenatal policies. And it is not that we are finding it difficult to reduce birth rate. The developed countries are equally finding it difficult to raise birth rate. One reason is that all the developed countries are democratic countries, they are not totalitarian countries anymore, and they cannot force anything on people. And once their women are educated and women are participating at par with men in socio-economic, cultural life, they do not want to produce children. They do not identify themselves with family and reproduction as in less developed countries they do. So, for a woman, for a girl like you in developed countries, career is as important as for your husband or as for your father, and you are not so much interested in producing, in bearing and rearing of children as your mothers or grandmothers were. So, that is the reason. That is why developed countries are finding it difficult. Either they have to force women to produce children by withdrawing temporarily or fully from the socio-cultural economic life of society, or they are going to have this problem of ineffective policies.
Thank you.